Hey folks, it's me back again, and this video I wanted to cover some things that I think I may have discussed like earlier in the past, or may have discussed in some live, uh, someone else's live video, like 24/7 Betterment's live videos that he's done in the past. But um, it's actually inspired. Come to think of it, actually, this topic I'm going to be talking about is inspired by one of his latest vlogs. He was talking about edging and how he doesn't consider that a relapse or a reset, or actually he doesn't consider it a reset. And I actually commented on the video, but it's just kind of something that I've seen like come up at various points in time, and for various reasons people have talked about the different modes of Nofap and counters and counting days and things of that nature. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was a while ago, obviously, but I had seen one of the videos by like the guys who run the Nofap forums, and they had the Nofap like corporation or whatever. But one of the guys, like one of these videos, he talked about, and I may link it in the low bar, but he talked about having like a dual counter system, or having like two counters for in terms of days. Um, Obviously after a certain point, like counting days kind of becomes meaningless because you've gotten to the point where you've broken the addiction. But he was talking about having like two counters in terms of like kind of taking the whole PMO and breaking it down into segments. Like, okay, maybe you saw some pornography or some pornography substitutes, but you didn't um, edge, or maybe you edged but you didn't go all the way or so, and you have like different counters there as to how many days you went without edging, or went without MO, or went without pornography or porn substitutes and that sort of thing. And you could use it to wean yourself off. At least that's my understanding. Using that to wean yourself off, having different modes and different like sort of levels. And that's why I have the whole easy mode and hard mode, like you see in my videos. Like some things I've labeled, like I think on my two 90 days series, or vlog series. One was 90 days easy mode, one was 90 days hard mode. And I went back and kind of like, I think I was like 60 days into this Nofap streak, the first one. And that's when it was like around that time, might have been a bit before, like 54, 55 days, I ended up looking at some pornography. But I didn't edge, I didn't fap, so that's where I kind of started thinking, okay, like going back on this whole sort of double counter system, which I had used previously, but um, it was something I kind of tried out, but I hadn't gotten really serious about. But at that point, that's when I decided, okay, I was on easy mode at that point in time, and around day 60, I think it was on day 60, I started off doing hard mode. And for me, easy mode was, at the very least, no MO, no edging, and no porno, or how should I put it? I would at least make the attempt to go for like a week or two without any pornography or porn substitutes. Um, that was like my bare minimum. So I was starting to like really wean myself off of it. And once I got to like 60 days, that's when I was just like, I think I got to the point where I realized that even without edging, even without MO, I was still getting, albeit in a lesser sense, a lot of the anxiety and depression effects of pornography usage and addiction. And that's when I was just like, I gotta go full bore. I've got to go, full measure, no more half measures. And I went into hard mode. And so I completed my 90 days easy mode, and then I completed my 90 days hard mode. And really, what ended up happening is I started really digging deeper, because I jettisoned the physical manifestation of the addiction, which was the edging, the masturbation, orgasm, that sort of thing, MO and edging. And I then started, examining things in the mental sense. So consciously, okay, like the conscious aspect was me actually going and looking at the stuff, and looking it up, watching it, that sort of deal. So then I started combating that, and what I ended up having to ask myself was these deeper questions like, why is it that I'm having these desires to go and look at this stuff? You know, I consciously, logically, rationally know this stuff isn't good for me. So what are the deeper reasons? And then that's when I start going to the subconscious side of things, and really starting to discuss and even just think about my underlying issues. Why PMO has such a pull for me, and why it became such an addiction. And that's when hard mode really started to really kick in and have an effect. And you know, I've used counters. I still use them. I still count days to a certain extent, especially when I post these videos. But I don't necessarily like actively think about it. I mean, like for those two vlog playlists, definitely, you know, I was aiming at getting at, you know, having a 90-day video, that sort of thing. That was kind of a goal there. But even with those, like I would go through like 2, 3, 4 days at times without even really counting and just going, okay, well, I'm gonna make a vlog now for this series. Okay, what day is it again? And then I had to go look back and add the days. So it's definitely useful to a certain extent. I mean, like, you know, you kind of get the sort of feeling I've gone through so many days, and it kind of does give you a sort of you know, confidence boost, or you know, a bit of that dopamine you're associating getting through so many days on Nofap with accomplishment and, you know, self-esteem and that sort of deal. But you know, like I said, like after a point, it kind of does start to lose its its usefulness after you get to, I think, you know, you get to that 90 days, let's say. Unless you're setting like a year-long goal or 6 month goal. I mean, that's what I'm doing. But you know, again, it only has so much meaning to me at this point, so far as I feel that I get to a year of hard mode, so to speak, and I feel that I will be fully recovered. I'm in the recovering aspect right now. I mean, I went through the whole being an addict. Now I feel like I'm in the recovering addict aspect, and then, or time, or phase, whatever you want to call it. And then after I get to about a year or so, I think that's when I can truly say like that, you know, I'm truly like not an addict anymore. There's no like, excuse me, there's no purpose in attaching that label to myself anymore. That's like, you know, either you are an addict or you're not an addict. And at that point, if I can have gotten through a year without that, then I can safely say that I'm not an addict anymore, period. Now, all of this stuff that I've been talking about, it brings me to this topic of gamification. And I think this is something that it's both helped with Nofap, like for me personally, but I think a lot of people have a criticism of it. Like I know Matt's What It Is was talking about that, and he kind of went off in a tangent talking about that a bit in one of his videos where he said like people, you know, they you know, they have their different modes of Nofap, and they kind of treat it like, you know, it's like a joke, or they get into all this what I would call like kind of woo type stuff, talking about superpowers and modes of Nofap and levels of Nofap and all things of that nature. But I think, at least in the beginning, for a lot of folks, especially those folks who are kind of cynical about it, or skeptical about Nofap, and you know, pornography addiction. You know, people will look at it and go like, "You can't be addicted to that. I mean, come on, that's like natural. You know, if you're not watching, you know, pornography or fapping to it, then there's something, you know, odd about you. Like, you know, like people who I remember back in the day, like people would say if you ask like 4 guys, you know, if they masturbate or they watch pornography, and if they all said no, then 3 of them are lying, and the 4th one must be like a homo or something like that. You know, they would use that like shaming language. You know, like if you're not watching pornography and or fapping, you know, masturbating, then it's like there's something off with you. You know, you're not normal, you're abnormal. And I think this whole sort of gamification of NoFap, other than for those of us who honestly have been addicted or are addicted to this, to PMO, and are trying to break that addiction, you know, it does help us, and insofar as it kind of makes it a little more lighthearted and less serious. But I think for some folks, the ones who are skeptical, if they view it as a challenge, they're more likely to engage in NoFap, and therefore they're more likely to actually be like, you know, do NoFap, by engaging in it, obviously. And when they engage in Nofap, they take, however many days they do. Oh, I'm gonna, do a week Nofap. I'm gonna do 2 weeks. I'm gonna do a month, 3 months, whatever. That's when they, you know, step into that world and suddenly realize, there's something to this. Like if they can't go for a week without it, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or a month, and they keep on relapsing and binging and so on. That's when people, who are skeptical realize that, maybe some of the stuff that people are talking about is kind of woo. It's mumbo jumbo. You know, um, it's sort of new agey, or Age of Aquarius type stuff. But um, outside of all that fluffy stuff, there is some to no fab. There's some real about it, and perhaps pornography is addicting. Perhaps I do have an addiction, etc., etc. Um, so gamifying nofap kind of makes it possible for those people to actually get involved, even though they are skeptical and they think it's kind of a joke. Um, so, having talked about that, and I do feel like there is a certain point where the gamification kind of would go too far, and um, either you are on NoFap or you're not, and there's no, you get to a point where like you're kind of beyond modes. As people try to get into monk mode, and they try to add more and more to it. But at that point, it's kind of like, to me, you're either doing NoFap or you're not doing NoFap. And so this is where I get into talking about goalposts. And when I think about goalposts, I'm thinking about people like, um, as well, kind of attached to it, people rationalizing pornography usage, rationalizing watching some substitutes for pornography, whether or not it's twerking videos, or that's Facebook, or any social media photos of attractive women. Um, I think that you have to set certain hard goalposts and just have them kind of set in the ground, so to speak, and you don't move them. Because if you start just trying to say, oh, I don't consider this I don't consider this or that a relapse or reset. I don't consider edging a relapse or reset. I don't consider watching a relapse or reset. Period. End of story. Um, and you keep on moving the goalposts, and eventually relapsing, binging, rationalization of these things, addiction, all this stuff, it really loses any sort of meaning or value. And if you just keep on moving those goalposts, then it's kind of like, what's the point? You're always going to be giving into that addicted part of your brain, addicted part of your personality or your mind, and letting that, you know, keep on pulling you back to this thing. That's an addiction. It's messing up your life. Or at the very least, preventing you from doing those things you need to do in order to make your life better. Improve your life, make yourself happy. So, what else did I want to talk about? Oh, superpowers. And then I'm going to cover where I'm at in general, to try to bring it back to you know my life. Yeah, that's the table I'm sitting at. But I suppose I've gotten to the point where superpowers to me really, like, they do exist in a sense, but I feel like it's more like, that's like you're experiencing normalcy for the first time in months, years, for some of us, decades. And when you experience that at first, when you experience being comfortable in your own skin, being able to talk to people and not, be anxious and double, triple, quadruple guessing what you said or what they said, or whether or not you can go talk to that girl you like, or go up to the counter at at some store and buy a bag of M&Ms or whatever, or answer your teacher's question, professor's question in class, and everybody looking at you. Once you get to that point where you're like no longer feeling negative about that, feeling anxiety, feeling depressed about it. Once you first experience it, when you haven't experienced it for a long time, or you never experienced it to begin with, or you don't have really any memory of experiencing that, it's gonna feel like a superpower. That you're on top of the world, that you're superhuman. But once you get to the point where you've gone through, let's say, 90 days or more of being in the state where you're no longer, no longer really have a counterpoint to that positive experience, and it just becomes life. And that's ultimately the goal, I feel, to get to that point where, you know, you don't really have to say, oh, I have a superpower now. It's just that, I talked to so and so. I went and did this. I did that. I didn't feel any anxiety. I didn't feel depression about it. I was able to stand up in front of, 100 people and give a presentation. And I didn't, I wasn't like drenched in sweat and shaking with fear. I just went and did it. Or there's this girl, I talked to for a few times, and I liked her, and she seemed to like me, and I asked her out. And whether she said yes or no, well, we actually went on a date or not, well, I did it, and it didn't, cause me to have a heart attack, or freak out, and it's just life at that point, which is ultimately the goal, I feel. Okay, so having covered all those topics, where I'm at right now, I think I'll have to put the day count in the video when I get home, when I upload this, but right now, for one thing, I'm working on a Java programming project to program like a 2D tower defense game. I'm going through a series of tutorials, and once I get that done, then I'll kind of like just modify it based off of that and use different things I've learned from the tutorials to expand the game. And then I'm not sure if I'll try to port it to Android right away or what have you, or just move on to something else, but I'm doing that. I'm applying to different jobs. I'm probably going to go down to like a staffing agency either today or tomorrow and just try to see what's up with them and see if I can't get in somewhere and make some money. Because I gotta pay some bills and that sort of deal, and I got expenses in the future for schooling and housing and whatnot. So, but I got to get on that. And again, I'm not sure. Like I talked about it in the past, but I'm really not sure when I have a concrete date to start like my little like weight loss, transformation, muscle building series. But that's something that's definitely at least, or at the very least, in the back of my head. But all that being said, where I'm at as far as Nofap is concerned is that, some people might call it monk mode, but I'm at the point where I've kind of gotten that space cleared, from my mind and from my life, and I'm just trying to fill it with accomplishments and moving forward in life. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm taking this sort of mentality that I know that if I let things stagnate too much in my life, I let too much negativity build up, I let too much failure in, especially in all sorts of major areas of my life, that it's going to build up to the point where, just like I did in the past, I'll go back to PMO, I'll go back to something, I'll find something to be my addiction, whether that's internet addiction, social media addiction, PMO addiction, something or other. I know I have like certain solid foundations against drinking alcohol, tobacco, drugs, that sort of thing, having sex outside of marriage, that sort of deal. But I know how in many ways my mind works. If I let too much negativity build up, too much stagnation, I'm going to want to run away from it. In order to avoid that, I'm going to have to keep on pressing forward and working on these goals, accomplishing things, getting things under my belt, getting projects done, maybe making videos of my projects to show like what I've accomplished. Whether I put it on this channel, I put it on some other channel, like a more professional, like, hey, this is my portfolio type YouTube channel. But stuff like that, working out, getting good grades, all those sorts of things, getting a job, making money, paying my bills, managing my life. That's what I'm gonna have to be doing. That's what I'm working on right now, because the more I push forward, the more space I create, the more I get ahead, in that direction, the less likely I'm going to have, a desire to want to run off to some fantasy land and just feel good for however many minutes or hours, or days that some addiction will make me feel, So, I think that's ultimately, like, once you do get through the 90 days, let's say, for instance, which I think the Nofap guys did get from like the Alcoholics Anonymous organization, the whole 90 days of sobriety. So okay, let's be 90 days sober from PMO, that sort of deal. But once you get to that point where you've developed enough immediate coping mechanisms, and that have nothing to do with PMO or create another addiction, and you have figured out how your mind works enough that okay, if you feel triggered, you feel urges, you feel anxiety and depression and stress, you don't automatically jump on the PMO bandwagon or go off and get drunk or high or whatever. Whatever it is that your addiction is. In this case, PMO we're talking about. Once you get to that point, it's kind of like you have to have goals that have nothing to do with Nofap, nothing to do with PMO, nothing to do with addiction, period, but per se, or period, depending on how you look at it. But just essentially move you forward in life and bring positivity and happiness to you. So I think that's it for now. That's where I'm at. That's what I've been wanting to talk about. So anywho, I'll see you folks around, and I do have this video and another video to upload. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you around, folks. Bye.